Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marino. Excited to be back here with our Action Network analyst, Dano Mattia. Dano, how we feeling?
Feeling great. We're almost to playoffs. Most exciting time of the year. Hate to see my Libs go down this last weekend to the Lynx. Everyone's talking about how great the Lynx are. I have a little bit on them, but Stewie might be back, so
That's
excited.
True. That's true. She did go off late in that game, a little too late as far as the win-loss column. So this is the last week of the regular season. We have a 5-game slate on Tuesday, September 17th. So we will talk through all of the matchups. But as we go, Dano, we're going to kind of sort of start to preview some playoff stuff because we do have some things that are known, some things that are very unknown. For instance, who is going to be the 8th and final spot in the playoffs? We currently have a 3-way tie in terms of record anyway between Washington, Chicago, and Atlanta. They're all 13-25 this season. But what's so crazy about this, Dano, is right now Washington, like if the playoffs were to end, Washington would be in that spot, which, I mean, because it goes by head-to-head, right? So Washington and Atlanta right now are 2-2, but point differential favors Washington. Washington has beaten Chicago 3-1 in their series, so they hold the tiebreaker over Chicago. And then we have a game here on Tuesday, which is Chicago and Atlanta. Now, Chicago currently leads that series 2-1. Obviously, if Atlanta wins that game, that's going to drastically improve their chances of getting in. They are out if they lose. So why don't we start there? We're going to start Sky Dream. I think this is a really tough game to bet. Not sure if you and I are going to go ahead and bet anything on it, but we got to talk about it because it's the most important game on the slate. Okay, so if the Dream were to obviously win their next two, they are in. So they have Chicago Tuesday. Their last game is at New York, so that's tough. Chicago's last game is at Connecticut, so that's tough. So I feel like both teams are probably like, we got to get this game. The Sky have lost 3 in a row, straight up and against the spread. They last played on Sunday, lost to Phoenix by 5. Atlanta has been up and down. I've been saying it, 4-3 against the spread in September. They got the massive win in overtime Sunday at Washington, crushing for Washington because, like I said, they would basically have been in. I talked about the head-to-head already. Chicago's currently in the lead. Here's, I think, what makes this really tough. Camila Cardoso was questionable for Sunday with a shoulder injury. She did play, but only 9 minutes, didn't play in the second half, and she is questionable again Tuesday. Dream are favored by 5.5. Just your general thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I mean, if Cardoso isn't playing, this number will shoot up, definitely towards the Dream. I think the Dream should win here. They are at home. They just pull off a gutsy win against or at Washington in overtime. Ridiculous game. I think Mystics scored in the first 30 seconds of overtime and didn't score again. But it's like two teams that I don't know who's going to show up, especially the Sky. Just got trounced by the Mystics a few weeks back in one of these games that matters between these three teams, and then shows up and kills the Wings without Angel Reese. So I mean, it's really if Chicago shows up, if they can make their shots like they were doing against the Mercury in this last game, they have a chance. I think Kennedy is going to give you at least 20. I feel very solid about her giving you at least 20 in this game. But I do think the Dream they're solid defensively for the most part.
Yeah.
And two, it's hard. There's a lot of pressure on this game for both teams. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago pull off the upset with Cardoso. Like they just show up and play an excellent game. Rachel Banham's hitting threes. But right now I do lean towards Dream, unfortunately.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I echo what you're saying. Like, I feel like it's dream or nothing, although I don't feel great about it just because this isn't just as an ugly matchup because both of these teams have just been unreliable and they've just been inconsistent. But the Sky more so recently have disappointed me because I thought that they had the fight in them. And I thought last week, I think what you're referring to, I think it was Tuesday they played the Mystics last week and I thought the Sky, I'm like, oh, they need this win. Like it would
Yeah,
be
we
such
were
a
texting about it.
yeah, and it would be such a disappointment if they were in the eighth spot. They were in the eighth spot in the playoffs this entire season, and to fall off at the end, even with Angel Reese out, to me is a massive disappointment because before she was out, they shouldn't have dropped some of the games that they dropped. I know Kennedy missed a few games, but still, um, and they didn't get it done. So I cannot rely on the motivation spot here, especially when the team on the other side is just as motivated because they are right there. So, okay, leaning dream or nothing. But let's talk about another game, including one of those three teams that are vying for that playoff spot, which is the Liberty visiting the Mystics. This is a 7 o'clock Eastern tip on Tuesday, NBA TV. Libs are favored by 8.5. And my initial thought here, Dano, was I lean Washington to cover this game because they've been great against the spread all season 25, 12, and 1, which is best in the W. They're 5-1 against the spread in September. The one loss being the heartbreaker Sunday against Atlanta. What the hell? And you are on board with this. You're thinking Washington here. Am I right?
I am. I think after playing the Lynx, the Libs are 1-2 against the spread. The Lynx throw out a crazy amount of length, size, and a lot of mid-range shots, like stuff that you just don't really see in the W. And also, I think the Liberty are fine. It's not like we must win this game to lock up the 1 seed. I think they know they're a game away, but they also know that Connecticut could beat the Lynx, and then they lock up the 1 seed. So the pressure is not completely on them. And I mean, Mystics are playing for their season, even though it would make sense for them to lose with the draft pick. Like, still, they've obviously proven to all of us that they're going to try and go for this. So
Right.
3-0 against the Libs this season against the spread. Yeah, they were all double digits, but I do think they cover. I think all the games have gone over this total as well. Um, if anything, I think the Libs will shoot better, specifically Sabrina. My God. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty important to make sure that you're coming into the playoffs with your best stuff, and she clearly isn't. So I do think that she is going to want to get going. Like I said, the Lynx are a tough matchup. Throw
Right.
a lot of different looks at you, so I can see her having a big game against the Mystics. But I think the Mystics find a way to cover. I don't remember the last time they lost two first halves in a row. So I I know everybody bets them on the first half. It's been the gift that keeps on giving, so I wouldn't mind that. But I think I am going to take them plus 8.5. I do think the Liberty get the win, but I think it's closer, probably in that 5 to 7 range.
Okay, so to your point about what the Liberty do and don't need, just to sort of reiterate that they would have to lose both of their remaining games, and Minnesota would have to win both of their remaining games for Minnesota to take over that 1 seed. So I think ultimately that's not going to happen. So I agree with you there. The only thing that's giving me trepidation, to your point, like we've seen the Mystics they're going for it, right? They have just been
Hmm.
going and going, going. Even when it made all the sense in the world to just kind of roll over, they have not done that. But Aaliyah Edwards is doubtful, and I know she hurt her ankle Friday, and I'm pretty sure that was the game that the Mystics still won. Missed
Hmm.
Sunday, so I'm not expecting her to play. but I do think it is a factor. But again, like the Mystics, it just seems like no matter who's hurt, they kind of find a way to fight and to defend and all those things. And then the other point that you kind of alluded to is just because the Liberty played kind of crappy on Sunday, I'm like, are they just gonna come out in sort of a bounce back fashion? But again, I still think at that number 8.5, Mystics fighting for their playoff lives. So I think ultimately I support you. I think we're both on the same page here. And I did look up just out of curiosity, like Liberty after a straight up loss, they're 3-3 against the spread. So nothing really one way or the other there.
Yeah, I mean, if it was the Sky or the Dream, I'd probably take the Libs at this number.
Yes.
But the Mystics always play the Lib stuff. They really do.
Yeah.
I mean, end of last season, the last regular season game, I think took Courtney Vandersloot layup to send it into overtime. And I think we were 12.5-point favorites then at home.
Okay, so this actually brings me to one other question I had for you. As somebody who has a rooting interest in the Liberty, who do you prefer? Like, okay, betting interest aside, what's the best matchup for the Liberty in round 1 of the playoffs? Basically what you just said is not the Mystics. So do you have any preference between the Dream and Sky? I guess probably I would say Sky at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sky would be easier. Dream can be frisky, and Dream go to the free throw line, 28 times a game. It's like ridiculous. I think they practice falling down. It's a joke.
Okay, got it.
But I'm not afraid of either of those teams. I'd be thrilled to get Atlanta in the first round, and I'd be thrilled to get Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm not worried about the Mystics. We'd still sweep, but would pose a more difficult matchup. They're veterans. They bring a little bit more juice.
Okay.
And Steph Dolson Revenge Series, my God.
Oh, true.
Don't put me near it.
True. You never know. All right. I agree. Like, I don't think it's going to matter a whole lot, but I figured it was worth asking just as we're getting this playoff bracket. It's coming clear into focus. Although I do think, like I said, sort of alluded to before, I mean, this could come down to the very last moment in terms of, tiebreakers, point differential, just to figure out that last spot. Let's move on to our next game here. We have the Lynx visiting the Sun, also a 7:00 Eastern tip. Lynx laying 1.5. So they are on a 6-game win streak, 4-2 against the spread in that span. As you already mentioned, took care of New York on the road Sunday. Connecticut is 4-3 against the spread in September. They lost at Vegas on Sunday. We all remember, Asia reached her, 1,000-point scoring mark, a record for a single season. Now, in the season series, Connecticut has won both meetings. They're 2-0 straight up, 1-1 against the spread. Won by a point in May, 5 points in July. So, I mean, it's been a while. I don't know how much I'm taking into account the head-to-head here. One thing I thought that was interesting about this game, the Sun under, so I'm calling it the Sunder, is 5-0-1 in their last 6 games, seeing the total at about 154.5.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think the Lynx are going to replicate their 50% shooting like they did against the Liberty. I mean, they were extremely hot, like ridiculous. So, and this is potentially a preview of a second round series. So, I kind of contrarianly lean the Sun here at home. I mean, it's definitely a letdown spot after going into New York and putting up 88 points. And granted, they eased up at the end, and when Stewie made like her own personal 20-0 run, it felt like. But I don't know. I feel like the Sun have been doing rather well for someone who used to bet against them all the time. So, I do think the Lynx have just had a run this entire season of ridiculous shot making.
Yeah.
So I'm probably staying away. I I think there's motivation for both teams here. Uh, just can see it going either way, but I would probably play the under if anything.
Okay, got you. I mean, yeah, I personally could see like if there's going to be a team that the Lynx are going to have shooting regression against, it's probably going to be the Sun,
Fair
who
point.
are just, I've been saying it all season, I just call them like a pain in the ass defensively. Hence, you see all of these unders happening. But one prop I did mention, not mention, I'm mentioning it now because I came across it before. Um, Marina Mabrey, 15 plus points. I saw it at like minus 102. She's hit this in 8 of her last 10 games, 10 of 14 games with Connecticut. I feel like if you think the Sun are going to play well and win, then I would take this Mabrey bet. I'm not sure about like because Minnesota is a really good defensive team too, and they're good at defending the three. But Mabrey's also just kind of a gunner, and having Bonner out there, like I think has helped her. So I'm I don't know. I'm kind of feeling that. I'm not selling it a whole lot because once again I'm just like I guess the Lynx just scare me a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think I feel okay about it.
Yeah. I mean, she went 4 for 17 against them when she was on the Sky,
Yeah.
but she was she was the only shooter that team had. So I think that was a primary focus for the Lynx. You got
Yes.
Ty Harris hitting some threes. Dewana, I mean, you let Dejanay probably shoot, but uh, to me, it's she has been that little bit of extra juice,
Yeah.
and she can actually create her own shot. Uh, my thing is, if this game is close at the end, I still don't think the Sun know who gets the ball. There, I
Yeah.
feel like they're so awkward in crunch time.
Oh, that's true. I agree with that. But I guess I could look at it on the bright side in terms of maybe this is sort of a Mabrey revenge type of game,
Yeah,
knowing that she didn't play well or didn't shoot well when she was on Chicago. But again, I felt the same way where I was like, kind of have to. I'm not taking that to heart too much, just because, yeah, that was the only outside shooting threat that Chicago had at the
no,
time.
for
So
sure. And I feel like her coming off the bench, she comes in with the mindset of I'm getting them up, uh,
yeah, like
which
she's
you
gonna
love to
make her
see.
mark. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so yet again, another tricky, I feel like a super tricky game. I'm almost like ready for the playoffs to start just so I feel like I know where the hell everybody is at.
yeah. Well, I think Thursday's going to have some easy spots that people are going to hit early, depending on what happens. There might be some meaningless games. So,
Yes.
um, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it still feels like there's a little bit of season left for a lot of these teams.
All right. Well, let's keep it moving. So we have the Aces back in action at Seattle. This is a 10 o'clock Eastern start on NBA TV. Vegas laying 5.5, and this is actually another one of your best bets, Dano.
Yeah, I want to fade the Storm into oblivion. Um, that team is so bad. Uh, and I thought they looked better at times without Jewel. Um, in this last game, they were missing Jewel and Ezzy, so I'm not sure, what the status is for both of those players. But if they're not playing, I mean, maybe Ezzy more than Jewel because you probably need Ezzy for Asia. Uh, if they're not playing, like I think this line should be closer to 9.5 or 10, especially the way the Aces have been playing.
Yeah.
There might be some, letdown spot after Asia got to 1,000, but that's not the type of player that I expect to just be emotionally satisfied with the way they are right now.
Mm,
uh, she's a monster. 3-point win against the Sparks recently in a game they were up as many as 15. In a 3-point win, Skylar Diggins-Smith was a plus 16.
mm.
Uh, I mean, she's been phenomenal, like, been great. It's just the rest of that supporting cast. It's like you just don't get anything. Like not afraid of Mercedes Russell coming off the bench. Joyner Holmes, great player, Longhorn, not really afraid. Jordan Horson played great, but you don't really get two good Jordan Horson games in a row. So, um, I mean, if the Aces care, I think they roll. So, my gut says they do. I think they're like right now on paper 10 points better than the Storm, even though this is at Seattle.
Right. And when you say they care, like the advantage here is they want to get home court in the playoffs,
Yep,
and they're likely, in these two teams are like in that 4-5 spot.
correct.
They're likely going to play each other at this point. And yeah, so the Aces 7-0-1 in their last 8 against the spread, 7-1 straight up. The one push they had was against Indiana Friday, which was, the second time playing them in a row. So you mentioned the 3-point game against LA for Seattle. So they are 1-3 against the spread in their last 4, all straight up wins. But the 3 against the spread losses against Dallas and LA twice. So I just don't trust this team. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Vegas 2-1 straight up and against the spread in the season series. Now the one loss on their end, that was back in June before Chelsea Gray returned from injury. So I'm with you. I think it's so interesting with the Aces because they actually had one of the tougher schedules to close the season when you looked at, say, like the top 5 contenders in the league. I remember coming out of the Olympic break, I'm like, wow, they have a tougher schedule than New York, than Minnesota, than Seattle, like all these other teams. And they're getting hot at the right time. Like I felt like for the longest time, maybe Vegas isn't the same. And then here they are and they're kind of rolling and they're kind of, dare I say, like, I feel like they look better than New York here recently. So I don't know. Maybe I'm questioning everything I know and believe in my heart at this point because to me, they look the best that they have looked all season.
Yeah, I had a real sharp guy text me saying, dare I say, is it time to hit the Aces? And like, granted, like if you're betting on the best player in the world, I think there's value.
Sure.
But like I think New York still hadn't hit their stride yet. I know there's 2 games left till playoffs, but I I still think that I like New York in a second round matchup. It's exciting to think about. I don't want to look ahead, but I mean, to your original point, like you win this game, you guarantee yourself 2 games at home in the first round in a 3-game series, and that is important. So
and
should be motivation to win this game.
Right. And given the way this whole season has gone for Vegas, just to get that in the first round, that would be huge. But as far as, more like threats, championship threats, like I do think the supporting cast of New York, if they play great, I mean, I guess that's an if, but the supporting cast of Vegas hasn't always played great. It's been Asia carrying for the most part. And everyone else, I feel like you don't quite know what you're going to get. And then you have Minnesota, who I think are pretty darn consistent on both sides of the ball, but do have a lot of shooting variance. So super interesting there. Okay, so you like Aces -5.5. And the one final game here on Tuesday, Mercury at Sparks, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Phoenix laying 3.5. And the only reason this is a little bit, you're not like, because your original thought, you see Mercury Sparks, you're like, oh, Mercury, they're going to cover 3.5, right? Kalia Copper has missed the last 2 games with a back issue. I feel like you probably aren't going to risk playing her, even though we haven't gotten official word as of this recording. LA, meanwhile, they've lost 7 straight games. They did cover their last 2 against Seattle, as we just discussed. Knock on Seattle. And then Phoenix
right?
on Sunday, had no trouble beating Chicago without Copper. So you're like, okay, maybe they'll be fine against the Sparks. But they are 2-4 straight up and against the spread in September. Season series, Phoenix is 3-0 straight up and against the spread. Both teams were on the road Sunday, so not a real rest advantage or travel advantage one way or the other. So I guess I do still lean Mercury, but I don't feel, again, I just don't really feel compelled.
No, I mean, I could see this. I mean, this is probably the last chance for a win this season. I mean, you're playing at the Lynx, and granted, the Lynx may rest players. I don't know. In the last game of the season, they lock up the 2 seed. Say they lock up the 2 seed and the Liberty win, and they have nothing to play for. I could see them resting players against the Sparks, but Sparks probably looking at this as one. It's the last home game.
Yeah.
Last time you're playing in front of your fans. Mercury have absolutely nothing to play for. They're locked into 7, like we said. Uh, no reason to jeopardize an injury to Ka or 2 of your starters who are some of the oldest players in the W. Um, Nothing against them, they just are.
Right.
You don't want to risk anything there. So I mean, granted, you don't want to go into the playoffs like on a sour note, but I could see the Mercury punting a little bit and just resting. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I think the line is probably set right, and you probably don't want to make a move until you know more about who is playing for the Mercury. And I mean, like Sparks beat the Libs at home.
True.
Why not? Why not beat the Mercury? So, if I'm gonna bet it like today, I would probably bet on the Sparks.
Interesting. And I'm pretty sure we talked about this on the pod recently. I'm pretty sure the Sparks are locked into the best overall lottery odds. So
Yep,
even if they were to just mess around and win this game, it's not going to like hurt their chances at any pick. So I don't hate that. And that's why I agree. I think you got to keep an eye on the injury reports, maybe even like if you're staying up late, if you're on the East Coast and you want to bet live and kind of see how this game is going. I don't hate that. Just because I think not only do the Mercury have a couple of the older stars in the league, but they also have like those types of players like the Diana Taurasi's, the Brittany Grinders of the world. They understand how to get up for the playoffs regardless of like what they do in the last
sure.
last 2 games of the regular season. So yeah, to your point, I'm not sold on there's not really clear cut motivation on either side. And I personally enjoy betting on motivation. So this is a stay away for me.
Totally.
Oh man. Okay. So the next time a podcast comes to you on this feed, it's going to be a playoff preview. My pal Matt Moore, you know him from the NBA version of Buckets, actually be filling in for me along with Jim Turvey. So that's coming Friday. We'll know everything. We'll know all the details. Playoffs start on Sunday, and then I'm going to be back Tuesday with more best bets and obviously to react to the first day of playoff games. So yeah, Dano, next time I talk to you, we're going to be in, it's the real deal. Like I said, we're going to know what everybody's fighting for here, and we can bet accordingly.
Push to the parade. I got to buy my flights. Still, I still think it's our year.
I do hope I'll be seeing you in New York later this year. And a reminder, by the way, because this is the second year, I guess the playoff format has changed. First round, best of 3, then the semis and the finals are best of 5. So it's right around the corner. Last possible finals date, I believe, is October 20th. But Dano, thanks again for joining us. I'll talk to you come playoffs, pal.
Yes, absolutely.
And thanks everybody for listening to Buckets. If you like what you hear, please rate and review the podcast. Also, download the award-winning Action app. If you haven't yet, you can line shop very easily on there. You can also track your own picks as well as your favorite experts' picks. So go ahead and do that, and let's get buckets.